Welcome to Wimlex episode number 31. Today, Lena Hackelöer, our new host from Sweden, is interviewing the founder of Bikroy.com, one of the biggest websites in Bangladesh and de facto the biggest marketplace over there. It's offering very, very interesting insights in how the market in Asia is working, how a European team can succeed in such an environment, and what it means for our plans for expansion into those markets. In terms of us, I'm talking about we as retailers and manufacturers. So please listen to our newest episodes from Le Wimlex Show.
Hello and welcome everybody to a new episode of the Wimlex Show, this time brought to you from Stockholm, Sweden. My name is Lena, and with me today I have Martin Malmström, who's the founder of Bikroy.com and who's just about to tell us a lot more about the topic of marketplaces and the Bangladeshi market. Martin, warm welcome, and please introduce yourself.
Thank you very much for being here. It's a great honor to be in this show. So my name is Martin. I just moved back from Bangladesh, where I was an entrepreneur building up Bikroy.com, the largest classified site in Bangladesh. So we scaled the team from myself up to 300 and made a company profitable earlier this year, which was extremely big milestone when you're having a sort of a go-to-market plan of almost 6 years. Apart from that, in Bangladesh, I was an investor and startup advisor to a couple of companies in Bangladesh, everything from when it comes to properties to other types of e-commerce players.
Do you have any personal connection with Bangladesh, or how did that come about? Given that you're Swedish, actually, we should maybe mention.
Yeah, exactly. No, I'm born and raised in Stockholm, in the rural part of Stockholm, so I didn't really have a lot of exposure to the developing world growing up. As I went to the university, I did my exchange program both in Singapore and Namibia, and then I worked and traveled a lot in sub-Saharan Africa for a long period of time. So I developed a strong interest when it comes to developing markets over time. I wrote my bachelor thesis in Namibia about the diamond dependency. I worked with orphanage in Ghana, and I traveled a lot in general. So I knew that I wanted to go back to the developing world at one point to make a big impact. And I was working as a management consultant for a while, delivering PowerPoint slides by myself in the rural part of Sweden, which sort of wasn't really the excitement that I was looking for in my life. So what happened was that I started to reach out to a bunch of investors. I pitched myself. I pitched the potential ideas that I had. And eventually this idea was presented to me by our investors, Kinnevik. Mm-hmm. Kinnevik had invested in Avito back in the days, which was a tremendously good investment for them. Avito is a Russian classified platform, just like Bikroy now is in Bangladesh.
Mm-hmm. And actually, I think one of the top 3 in the world, I believe.
Yeah.
Very large. And also correct. Swedish founded and Swedish owned, we should maybe mention.
That's correct.
Mm-hmm.
That's correct.
Or maybe no longer Swedish owned. I'm actually not sure. I think there's big investors in that one as well. But
yeah.
Okay. For those of you, for those who don't know, among the listeners, Kinnevik is a large Swedish firm. Do you want to say a few things about them? I'm not sure they're so known. We've had them actually on the show. We've had the new CEO, interviewed by Alexander.
Oh, yeah, then maybe you should listen to that podcast to get a better intro than I can probably give. But it's an old Swedish venture, a big Swedish investment company that's been investing into a lot of exciting ventures across the years. One of the bigger ones has been Millicom in the developing world, which is a telco, done tremendously well. They've also invested in Rocket Internet and Zalando, another couple of cool online ventures. Mm-hmm. So they invested in Avito as well in Russia in the early days, which went really, really well. So after a few years, they thought that, okay, this is a really cool business model. We understand it. We know the ins and outs. We see the potential upside of it. So this basic sort of market dynamics where you have somebody buying and somebody selling, it exists all around the world. Everybody needs this type of service. Everybody has a secondhand product to sell to somebody. Mm-hmm. So why not launch exactly the same type of business model into more markets? So what they did was that they founded a company called Saltside Technologies. And Saltside started off its classified platform in Pakistan. which is it's a huge market, strong economy, and SaltSide struggled quite a bit in the market. After launching the MVP, it came up with a strong new competitor who came in called OLX, which is a internationally very renowned classified player. Mm-hmm. So after a few months or maybe even a year in operation, they decided to pull back because the competition from OLX was too strong. So maybe to go a little bit more back to sort of why launch a classified platform in a developing world very early on. In order to become a very, very profitable player, you need to have, of course, a strong economy when it comes to the classified space. So when you launch in a market that is fairly new, what you look at the macroeconomics. Is this a market matured enough for this type of solution? So you have, what's the GDP like? What's the competitive landscape like? Is there this type of solution already available in the market? But it's offline, for example. How big is the internet penetration? Is internet already adopted by the local market? Mm-hmm. Pakistan was absolutely fitting those bigger criterias, but the competition became extremely, extremely tough. So SaltSide then pulled back from Pakistan, and then they started to look into a couple of more markets, and that's when I came on board. And we started to look at Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, and in Ghana. So 3 markets, 2 in Asia and one in Africa. I had a previous connection with Ghana because I've been living there for a few months. So I knew Ghana. But looking at the business potential of the 3 different markets, Ghana is a population of, I think it's about 20 million, Sri Lanka maybe 22, and Bangladesh is a population of 160 million.
Oh, it's a large country.
Yeah, so clearly the biggest potential when it comes to the size of the market, the long-term prospect of the market. And I was coming back to what I described earlier with, when moving into a developing economy, because you need to have a very long time horizon of your investment, because it takes a while for you to build traction, build momentum, establish that people actually want to pay for your service online, because it's you're opening up the market for a whole new type of solution. So Bangladesh is a market where they were liberated from Pakistan in 1971. There was a strong independence war, insurgency war, and after I think almost seven months of war, they were liberated from Pakistan. And since the liberation in 71, their economy has been very strong. They've been moving from 7 babies per mom on average down to 2, a GDP growth on average between 4 and 8%. It's a huge market. It's a huge potential, going from a GDP per capita from $600 in 71 to almost $1,800 now in 2018, which is comparable to, for example, Germany, which is about 45,000, I think.
So it matched all the criteria.
It certainly did, right? It had a strong proof track record in terms of economy. The macro factors were there. The downside of Bangladesh as a market was that 3G wasn't available. So it was still 2G back in 2013 or 12 when we started to look at the market.
When did you actually move?
In 2013.
And 13, okay.
Yep.
And then you spent 6 years in total.
Exactly.
Coming back earlier this year.
Exactly.
So for the record, Bikroy.com is a classified site. There is no online auctions.
Correct.
And how does the business monetize itself?
So the business, we started off with not monetizing the business at all. So maybe you can divide sort of the traction of the business over 3 different segments. The first 2 to 3 years was all about building traction and building momentum on the platform. Mm-hmm. A classified site is dependent on having both sellers and buyers liking the platform. And once you have 2 parts of the sort of the transaction enjoying the platform, the snowball effects comes. So in the beginning, you need to ensure that you have a lot of sellers on the platform that are selling the right type of product, is able to sell the right product for the right price, and you need to have buyers that wants to buy that product. So in the beginning, there was a lot of ATL marketing. The second part, we started to slowly monetize. So monetizing services, because in Bangladesh at that time, in 2014-15, there was nobody who charged anybody for online services. Everything is offline, right? So this whole way of developing the customer behavior to pay for something online, it took quite a while. So slowly starting to introduce this, first for businesses, and as we went along for private individuals as well. So now we're charging customers for in different ways. One is listing fees on the platform. So if you're selling a high ticket items, a car, property, motorbike, or even an expensive mobile phone, you as a seller have to pay X euros or takas, the local currencies, to post that ad on the platform, which is dependent on a bunch of different variables, location and price of the product. We have premium services such as top ads and bump ups in order to make your listing get more attention on the search page. We have corporate banners where larger companies like Unilever or one of the telcos are putting up advertisement on the platform. For SMB, small or medium businesses, you can put up a website called bikroy.com/Lena's car shop, where you have all of your car listings in one place. So you don't need to create your own website. You put all the content available with us. And then there's also Buy Now, which is home delivery, which is a fairly new feature that was introduced in 2018, where we're starting to scale it for real.
Mm-hmm. Including shipping options as well.
Yeah, exactly. So then we took ownership of the entire fulfillment process. But it's a very small part of the business in comparison to the other parts. And when it comes to revenues.
Can people today also pay on bikroy.com, or is it something that's still done physically between buyer and seller?
So it depends, and it's been sort of a gradual process moving towards paying online. Although the majority of the transactions on the platform is being dealt with in person between the seller and the buyer. But we do offer that opportunity.
So you mentioned above the line marketing in the beginning, because my next question was going to be, where do the customers actually come from? Because I imagine that it's actually quite hard to be scaling supply and demand in sync, because assuming if they're out of sync for too long a time, people start losing interest. I mean, I imagine if I'm a seller and I put up all of my ads and there is no customers, I'm going to stop wanting to post things and vice versa. So did you have a marketing budget from the very get-go, or was it something that you had to sort of prove over time to your investors?
Yeah, well, of course, that was a gradual process as well. No, we were fortunate enough that Kinnevik put in a lot of money into the venture very early on. So they had a very long-term sort of vision of what they wanted to do with this company. So they were seeing an investment period of 6 to 10 years of putting in money into this type of company because of the macro factors of the economy. It's a very early stage market, right? And they knew that from the beginning, but they also knew that in order to take off, to get to some level where it's actually interesting to do business, you need to invest a lot in marketing in order for that to take off. Mm-hmm. So what we did in practice in the beginning was that we actually called local classified sites that was very, very small, or the local classified newspapers. So back in the day, at least in Sweden, I think in the mid-90s, we had something called the Yellow Pages, where you had classified ad after classified ad, which were updated maybe once a month or something like that. So what we did is that we took that content and put that online. We called the sellers and said, hey, we have this new classified site ready. We can put it up on our platform. Doesn't cost you anything, but you will get more buyers of your product. Most of the time they said, yeah, sure, it's no effort for me. Just go ahead and do it.
So you copy-pasted content from offline to online.
Exactly.
That's something, huh?
Exactly. So build the content on the platform, and that's how we did it. Sometimes we took, if it was a car, for example, or if it was a mobile phone, we could Google the picture of the car or mobile phone and then put it up to make it more appealing for the buyers. Mm-hmm. So that was a very big investment in the beginning to sort of create a fundament of content on the platform.
How manual a process was this? Entirely manual, from what it sounds like.
Yeah, exactly. So that's why we needed such a big team of headcount, because as much of an online business as we're an offline business.
Mm-hmm. Was there any competition when you started out?
Yes. So when we actually launched in Bangladesh, there was one other company which was funded by Telenor, the larger telco in the Nordics, but they're actually really, really big in Asia, with telcos in Bangladesh, of course, Thailand, Malaysia, I think Malaysia as well. I might be wrong, but they're very big, and Norway and Sweden, they're very big as well. So they put in a lot of money into that venture. So we had fierce competition fairly early on with somebody with pretty deep pockets. So that was a tough fight from the beginning. However, you could clearly see that we had slightly different focuses early on, and I think those were the reasons why we were able to beat them at the end. But so so that was one competitor in the beginning that we had. Over time, Schibsted, which is another large classified player in Europe, they merged together with Telenor. So they became Schibsted and Telenor in Bangladesh. So from my perspective, they had the capital that was required to pull off a really good fight, and the knowledge, because Schibsted has huge knowledge when it comes to running classified sites.
And that was also a classified site. So not something, no particular category that was in focus.
No, classified
very broad,
site.
just as you. Because my other question, actually, on that note, you mentioned that you would be able to sell anything on the classified side, including, for example, cars. And if you look at the European landscape, I think most markets have clear champions in each category.
Yep.
I mean, there's one big player for cars, there's one for real estate. I guess those are perhaps the two biggest examples. But is that the same in Bangladesh, or are people focused much more on bigbar.com for everything now?
Yeah, so now it's more like that. There are, even in Europe, you have general classified sites. You have Blocket in Sweden, you have Le Bon Coin in France, you have Marktplaats in maybe I'm pronouncing it wrong, in the Netherlands. So there are general classified sites that usually do really well, because once you have the momentum, you have all the sellers, you have all the buyers. Same in the US, you have Craigslist, which is a general classified site, but they are by far the most profitable sort of online platform in the US. But they're backdated if you look at their platform. They haven't done any development for the last 15 years, but they're doing great.
Still the world's largest site, I believe, actually.
Yeah, I think so too. So we had Schibsted Telenor coming into Bangladesh with full force, which was very, very challenging. And then in 2014, I think OLX Naspers came into Bangladesh as well. So OLX is a huge international classified player as well. So we had two people competing for three players then, us, OLX Naspers, and then Telenor Schibsted was fighting for the same space. So three international companies moving into Bangladesh with full force.
Yet I know that bikroy.com is largest today. So you made it. What was the path to success? What did you do differently? Yeah,
we actually kicked them out. So both of them, it was a longer process. They both left the market in 2018 formally. So they actually merged at one point, and then they tried to sell the venture, but didn't succeed. So then eventually it was just us left. So we're the only classified site left. There are, a couple of local ones that are not significant, but we are the only ones that are, we are the by far largest classified platform in Bangladesh, no doubt. So the reason for success was, so bikroy.com means sell in Bengali, the local language in Bangladesh. So, as I said earlier, Bangladesh has a history of being part of East Pakistan, being part of Pakistan. They were liberated in 1971, so it's a very proud country, patriotic, if you will. So, if you had to choose between a Telenor as a brand or Schibsted as a brand, which is clearly not Bengali, right? And you have OLX, which is clearly not Bengali as well. It's an international big brand. Or you have a third option, which is bikroy.com, which means sell in Bengali. And we pushed ourselves in media as we were a company by Bengalis for Bengalis. I was the only foreigner at bikroy.com.
In the entire business? In
the entire business in Bangladesh, yeah. Huh. So we were pushing our brand as being Bangladeshi. And that certainly made a mark in people's mind, 100%. So that's one of the biggest reasons I think that we were able to win the market. And also it's a great brand name, right? Sell.com, basically. Bikroy means sell. So sell.com is a strong URL to have.
Was that domain actually taken when you entered?
No. Nobody had it.
So it was that early actually on the market?
Yeah. So when we moved into Bangladesh, the internet penetration was around 2 or 3%. So internet wasn't really a thing. So the number of people who had bought very good, good locally adopted domain names weren't that many. So Bikroy was available.
Would you consider yourself having built the category in that market?
100%. Absolutely. Well, the other ones helped, of course, as well. But we were the leading player after about a year in operation. So the brand name was absolutely a key for us to win the market. The other one which is extremely important, was that we had a very strong focus on our operations. So as I said before, in order to get a snowball effect going on a classified site where you have buyers and sellers to actually like what they're buying and selling on the platform, it's easy to know what you're going to get. You have to make sure that you have the best content at all times. What people want to buy and what people want to sell. So
what was your biggest category?
Mobile phones.
Mobile phones, okay.
Yeah.
Well, I guess also owing to the rise of that part of the economy in the country. Then.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. No, mobile phones was like a currency to some extent. People were buying, the frequency was crazy. People were selling, we had accounts for private individuals who was not doing this on business, who was selling up to 12 mobile phones a month. They just wanted to upgrade. For a short period of time.
Reselling used phones more so than actually people buying new phones.
Yeah. And then eventually they turned into becoming business and, they were becoming a customer of ours. But in the beginning, they just did it to upgrade. Because if you buy a secondhand phone, you make it a little bit nicer. I don't know, you change the screen or you change the battery, you can sell it for a little bit more and then up you move in the ladder. So what we did in the beginning, which was extremely time consuming and operationally heavy, was to make sure that all the ads came up on the platform. So we had sort of one level of quality there when people putting up ads on the platform through us, because we were teaching people over the phone how to do it. But then people started to do it themselves without our instructions. Of course, we had instructions on the website, but people were posting book 170 taka.
And that's not a very searchable.
No, like what kind of book is it? You have pictures. What kind of condition is it in? Like I don't know anything about this, right? So we have to put in a lot of effort to call these sellers and say, hey, in order for you to sell your product better and faster, we would like you to write a better title. And can we help you to write a better title? Can we take a photo? What kind of a book is it? Can we Google it? Can we download it for you? And can we upload it for you to make sure that you actually sell it? And once they've sold the product, that's a happy experience. That's great, right? And then they learn and slowly over time, they get used to it. And then a new person coming into the website selling a car for the first time, for example, the first thing that they do is, of course, what is my car being sold for? What do other people write on my ad? So
they benchmark against others' content.
And they learn. And then once we started to introduce a paid service where you have to pay for putting up your listing on the platform, in order to upload your car ad, the quality increased even more. The other players in the market did not do that. So they just let everybody post whatever they wanted to. More or less, of course, they had some mechanisms in place to make sure that the quality was better than what it was when it came in, but we did a much better job in making that happen.
Bangladesh is not necessarily the most politically stable market, right? I think people have been following the past couple of years. There were, unfortunately, also terrorist attacks, amongst others. For you, on a personal note, was it easy to get accustomed to the culture, being the only non-Bangladeshi in the business? Or?
No, I think my first 6 months was extremely difficult. I came into Bangladesh I moved to Bangladesh in 2013. Was a lot of political disturbances and violence when I moved. There was a Molotov cocktail being thrown over my car, a fiery Molotov cocktail being thrown over my car. When I was on the way to office, there was a demonstration, large group of people in a demonstration train coming towards me, and they flipped over a bus in front of me with people in it, and they put it on fire. I was able to take a detour and move away. We had staff who was out meeting clients, and they were attacked by during these violent demonstrations. So it was extremely turbulent politically, which was challenging. On top of that, you had my physical health, which was not great. I moved when I was maybe 68 kgs or something like that. I lost 10 kgs the first 6 months because I was food poisoned constantly, which was very, very tough. I couldn't find a good routine for myself when it came to food or working out or anything like that. So I was under a lot of pressure. And then on top of that, you had the cultural dynamics of managing work for the first, or working in a predominantly Muslim country, and a very, very different culture, what Bangladesh is.
Was there ever a time when you considered pulling out?
Yeah. So I told myself minimum 1 year, no matter what. And after the first year, things became a lot better. But the first 6 months, I think I can tell. I will probably write books about my first 6 months. I moved to Bangladesh not having any, extensive management experience, but all of a sudden I had to build a team up to 50 people over the first 6 months, and that there was a lot of tension in that process as well, where you have the cultural shock, where you have hierarchies have to build into management systems, and I'm like, no, this is. My name is Martin. I'm Swedish. Take it easy.
Very flat hierarchies, as is common in Sweden.
Exactly.
Maybe it doesn't work everywhere.
It was difficult. Over time, that actually improved quite a bit. In the beginning, it was very tough. They were surprised that I didn't have my own bathroom, that I did not have my own room. I was sitting in an open landscape with the rest of the team. And that was very, very weird for people. And they wonder what kind of manager that I was. But over time that improved after people understood the way I was working and the way I gave people responsibilities and ownership and freedom within certain set of boundaries. They grew quite a lot as individuals. And over time, as the organization grew, to a much larger team, they were much more receptive to adopting that culture once the rest of the organization was behaving somewhat in the same way.
I did some research online and I found quite a number of pictures of you driving different initiatives around, well, I think one of them was women's rights, and generally social engagement. And I saw some pictures of you and the team, and it generally looks like the corporate culture was quite strong, at least from the outside.
Yeah, no, that was one of the things that I really wanted to do, because when you see other companies in Bangladesh, it's very hierarchical. You have the big boss who decides everything, and you don't take your own decisions, which to me isn't really the way you enable an organization to grow and to scale and to accomplish great things and give people responsibilities. So I wanted to do something different fairly early on and give a lot of ownership and responsibilities to people. And in the beginning it was very tough because they were not used to it. It was not a part of the culture and the way of you do corporate stuff in Bangladesh. But over time it certainly improved.
The people that you recruited, did they have any kind of experience in the digital economy, or were most of the employees sort of first timers in that space? Most
were absolutely first timers. As I said, when I moved, the internet penetration was 2%. So, the technology space was not really something that interests anybody. But now the internet penetration in Bangladesh is about 20%, 20-30%, depending on what metric that you actually look at. But it's forced the entire corporate space to move over to become more and more digital, which is interesting, right? Because they skip a few steps. We had desktops in the beginning. They hardly have laptops. They have smartphones or tablets. So they move over to a much more user-friendly, easy to, quick decisions kind of thing, rather than we have come from the background of using big desktops.
So classifieds are, of course, not the only way to buy online. So what about general e-commerce? Are there any e-commerce businesses today that are locally founded?
Yeah, there's one. There's one e-commerce platform called Ashkerdil that is doing really well. There is another one that was just launched called Evali. But there is a big one that some of you know that you're probably familiar with, is Daraz, which is a Rocket Internet Ventures that was then sold to Alibaba in China. So they have a very strong dominance or strong position in the market in Bangladesh. But there's a lot of people who's going after the e-commerce space, both on the general side but also vertical by vertical. So it's happening. A lot of cool things is happening in Bangladesh. There's a lot of challenges when it comes to doing e-commerce, for many reasons. One is logistics. It's extremely difficult to manage logistics, to be delivering things as per expectations and making sure that the package is always there, because the third party providers is not there. So when we actually started to open up for this as well, to do end-to-end delivery. And it's tricky, right? You have somebody, a motorbike driver, coming out to deliver an iPhone 10, which is maybe 10x his monthly salary. I understand that person leaves with the phone. So it's a lot of complicated stuff when it comes to delivery. Of course, you have insurances in place, and you improve your operations, you recruit better people, but it's difficult to scale. So it's the whole logistics piece is difficult. Also, when the other part of it is when you actually deliver the iPhone, that goes well. You actually have cash in your hand to a large extent, which is also a risk, right? Traveling with cash is complicated.
Although meeting people in person, handing over cash with goods in hand.
Absolutely.
And may also not be the safest option always.
Yeah, no, absolutely. If you're meeting someone in a dark alley, it's a challenge. So you have to put a lot of those procedures in place to make sure that actually it's safe and sound. And that's a big challenge for e-commerce companies, but it's improving. You put tracking in place, and you have better people on the ground who understands the business.
Is Amazon shipping to Bangladesh?
No,
but are they present?
No, but Alibaba is through Daraz, but also through Ali. What are they called? I forgot the name of it. They have an e-commerce that is not they leveraging the platform and the inventory in China and then shipping it to Bangladesh.
Wouldn't they be a potential player that could also enter into the space?
Classified space, not so sure. That's not what they do. If you look at other markets, e-commerce, absolutely, for sure. They could absolutely step in. But you need to be very hyper local, right? Amazon has invested billions of dollars in India, for example, to get the market foothold in comparison to you had Snapdeal in India, you had Flipkart in India. So there's a it's a very competitive space because a lot of people want to do e-commerce because it's big, it's huge, right? But I do think that Bangladesh is a different beast. And if you do step in, you need to be prepared for making a lot of investment for a long time. And some people have coming in early, just like we did, and we were able to take a very strong position. And there is this saying when it comes to the classified space, referring to Craigslist, right? They've been having their dominant market position for years, even though they haven't developed a lot of cool new features and making it more user friendly. But once you have the buying and the selling dynamics, it's really, really good for a classified site. For e-commerce, it's different because it's just the best deal and then you're making the delivery happen. And that is really, really thin margins. On a classified end of it, we don't really own an inventory. We don't really have stock. Now we're starting to do it, but it's not a big part of the business. But if you're posting a car ad on the platform, you pay us electronically. And as soon as you paid us, the ad goes live. We have almost no cost connecting to that. While on the e-commerce site, you have to source the product, which is done from the classified site from the seller. We have to source the product, we have to keep inventory, and then we have to deliver it, and then we have to manage the payment. For classified sites, that's not the case. So it's two very different type of businesses.
Yeah, that's actually a very interesting point. That once you have sort of a large brand on the market, the customer acquisition dynamics are probably quite different, I would imagine, comparatively. Yeah. So in terms of marketing channels in a market such as Bangladesh, what you mentioned above the line earlier, but what would be your go-to channel? Is it TV? Is it billboards? How do you speak to Bangladeshi customers? Yeah,
so in the beginning, our strategy was move offline to online. So we spent a lot of energy and effort into ATL medium. So TV, radio, billboards, newspaper, press ads. We were at one point, we had the third most number of spots on TV over a period of time. So we had over, I think, 1,500 spots on TV during a single day, which is, it's a lot of spots on doing advertisements. So people certainly knew about our brand. That over time, sort of once we hit a certain level of brand perception, because this amount of ATL investment actually made us to be the fourth most Googled term in Bangladesh in 2014. So we're extremely popular. If you compared us to the other brands, we were dominating in terms of brand awareness. It was not only the amount of money that we invested, because we did it a lot smarter than the competition as well. I was going to come to that as a third or fourth point on my sort of why we won against competition, but hustling. Doing great deals in all the investments that we made, going up to the TV channel head and say, hey, what kind of deal can we do here? Instead of just putting a big bag of money and then asking them to distribute it. But in the beginning, the TV, radio, billboard, newspaper, press ad was big for us. But over time, we've established a strong presence on the ground, but internet penetration is still just 8%. So why are we talking to a big part of the population that doesn't have internet? So we started to move more and more towards, we always had we invested a lot in online marketing, but now we started to more or less only do online marketing and very small efforts in ATL. So online marketing is Google PPC and Facebook PPC. And then we did a couple of local networks, to make sure that we gained traction. So we moved from bringing offline to online, sort of being the enabler of the entire market. And that was our responsibility because we were the by far largest online platform. And over time, we moved to bringing people from Facebook to online. So Facebook is the first point of entry for most people who gets access to the internet for the first time. You have the Maslow's pyramid of
needs.
Exactly. So you need social interactions, and that's what's happened with Facebook. So if you look at the internet population in Bangladesh and you look at the Facebook population in Bangladesh, those are two different things because the Facebook population is significantly bigger. If you ask a random Bangladeshi person on the street, do you use internet? They say no, but do you use Facebook? They say yes.
Is there no other local site?
No other local, no other local social media platform that is worth mentioning now. Do you have, Instagram, Snapchat, TikTok that is popping up, but Facebook is by far dominating. Yeah.
Huh. Interesting.
Yeah. So we moved from going from offline to online to online, from Facebook to online. Yeah.
So in the early years, then you were very much still building the category. Now that you have significant traction on the market, is growth actually speeding up? Are you accelerating in terms of growth? Or now you're longer with the business, of course. Would you say that it's going faster, or was it rather so that you were able to capitalize on a lot of organic growth in terms of internet penetration early on, and now it's rather stabilizing it all?
No, yeah. So now I think the biggest growth for a company like Bikroy is absolutely yet to come. Primarily because of the macro dynamics. You have internet population, growing very, very fast right now. Moving from only 2-3% when I moved in 2013 now to 20-30%, and over the next 5-8 years it's probably going to double. So the exponential effect is happening. It's happening right now. Just you need to be patient for it to come, but it will come. Which is it's interesting, right? Once you get internet for the first time, the untapped population, right? They're going to go through exactly the same process as the first 5 million did to some extent. They're going to use Facebook initially. They're going to connect with friends and family. They understand that, okay, so now what do? We can buy and transact things online, but there's more services available online now. You can pay your internet bill, you can pay your electricity bill online. And now you can also buy your groceries online, or you can buy a car online. So all of a sudden, when the ecosystem is there, the snowball effect goes even faster. So the exponential effect is going to go, absolutely going to come.
Do you think there's other markets in the emerging world today where you could do a similar journey, theoretically, or has the train sort of left the station?
Well, Myanmar is an interesting market, although I think that they have made a lot of progress over the past 5 years, I would say, with more telcos coming in and delivering 4G, and that's really changed the market dynamics when it comes to online businesses. Then you have, extremely underdeveloped market, but that's also very challenging. You have Sudan, for example, or those type of markets that are more conflict areas that are absolutely an opportunity for these types of businesses. But it's very early stage, and it's going into a market with a high political risk also means a high business risk, of course.
Was corruption ever a topic for you that you had to deal with? I think it comes to mind.
Yeah, it's a very relevant question, and it sure did. Bangladesh is one of the more corrupt countries in the world, which unfortunately usually comes being one of the poorest countries in the world. So when I moved there, I was coming there as a blonde, blue-eyed Swede, having, I'm not going to pay out any bribes. That was my initial assumption. And that also happened. We did not pay any bribes, but we were exposed to it very frequently. I think it took me a year to get my work permit in order, because the guy who was managing my work permit, he came up to me and did a few interviews. And then after the second or third interview, he looked at me and he asked me, do you want a good report or do you want a good report? Shaking his head to the right and to the left. I'm like, I don't know what you're talking about. I want a report and I want my work permit because I think that I'm eligible for it based on the legal requirements. And he's like, no, you don't get it. Do you want a good report or do you want a bad report?
Indicating that there was room for negotiation.
Yeah, absolutely. And I said, no, that's not happening. So, and then over time, there were a bunch of inquiries from governmental authorities. When it came to the tax authority, when we were submitting our first corporate tax, they were like, okay, so how much tax do you want to pay? Hint, hint. So that's a challenge.
Is that one of those things that is a little bit black and white, as in once you start, you're sort of going down the downward spiral and you always have to do it and you just have to maintain strong and try to get away? Yeah,
exactly. Yeah. And it was so many other companies that sort of failed because they had to get the business decision through and they have to get something done. And then they, it doesn't seem like a lot of money at the time. It doesn't really matter. But once you start, you're stuck. So if anybody's considering going into a market where corruption is an issue, don't pay out bribes. We were able to manage it because I felt so strongly about it. But it's difficult.
Oh, I can imagine, actually. So, seeing that we only have the duration of a short flight for this podcast, I have a final question for you. If you were to do this again, what would you do differently, if anything? Any mistakes in hindsight that you'd like to avoid, or anything that you feel I wish we had done that in a different way from the start. It would have saved us a lot of trouble, or we would have grown faster.
Good question. I think that I of course did millions of mistakes as being sort of the first time where I was a manager for so many people, and that was a lot of challenges with that when it comes to being responsible for people. One book that I wish that I read earlier is called The Great CEO from Within. It's a Google Docs book, right, written by a XY Combinator author. Extremely good of how you structured your day-to-day life as a CEO. How you make sure that you have time for everybody, but you also have time for your own shit, and you isolate the stuff that you really need to get done for yourself. So that's one book that I wish that I read earlier, and a book that I wish that I adopted earlier. So implementing everything from OKRs to meeting calendar cadence and giving away responsibilities and waiting for people to do their mistakes. And then they learn from them, right? Which is the beauty. The second,
how far into the journey did you discover that book?
No, but I think I developed a lot. So I read the book my last 2 years in Bangladesh, and I think I adopted a lot of these stuff before reading the book. And I think a lot of CEOs are adopting these things, but it was just perfected after reading this book. There's a lot of good hands-on tips and tricks. By far the best management literature that I've ever read.
I've actually seen it too. I think it's funny that it's a Google Doc and no one's actually published it.
Yeah. The second thing, I think the struggle that all startups are going through is to recruit the right people at the right time. You have this long-term vision, but you also have this short-term need. You need to meet these KPIs in order to satisfy investors or satisfy clients. So what do you do to satisfy that need now, but also managing it in the longer run? So what I often ended up doing in the beginning, especially, unfortunately, was to recruit people who solved the need today, but didn't solve the need tomorrow. It's one thing to be a manager over 1 or 2 people, or being a manager of 30 people or 50 people. Everybody cannot manage that growth. So what I wish that I had done was to recruit, the right level earlier. I maybe would have lost a little bit on that decision on the short term, but in the long run would have absolutely been the right decision.
Taking height from more senior people earlier on. Given they would have been available.
That's also a problem, especially in Bangladesh, where the senior management, the talent there is very, very difficult to get a hold of. But I think that we could have pulled that off. We would have done it better from the beginning.
Sounds like a super interesting journey you've done. Congratulations.
Thank you very much. Happy to be back in Sweden, though. Yeah, enjoy to breathe the air, walk into office every day.
Not right now. Our listeners can't see it, but it's starting to get very grey and cold here in Sweden now in November. But at least it's politically a safer environment.
Comparing the pollution levels, I'm very happy to be back in Sweden.
Yeah, Dhaka, I heard, is actually one of the cities with lowest quality of life in the entire world.
Yeah, it's actually, I think it's like on place 2 or 3 after or just before Syria, or which is I don't think that statistics is justice though. I love Dhaka. I think it was a beautiful place to be in. It's a really exciting part of the world. I'm happy to come back. I have a lot of friends and family and vested interest as well.
I imagine after so many years, 6 years is a long time.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for joining us on the show today, Martin. Pleasure hearing more about you and your journey in particular. And I hope everyone found the episode interesting, and hopefully speak to you again soon.
Thank you very much. Great to be here.
Bye-bye.
That's it. I hope you learned as much as I did with this episode. And stay tuned for the next episodes, which will happen in Amsterdam, Stockholm, and of course all over Germany with international guests from retailing and manufacturing businesses.